Over the past couple of years, I've seen just about every YouTuber that does anything about NASCAR at least once talk about what schedule they'd want, so I might as well fall in line and go through this rite of passage today while there's nothing really major going on in the NASCAR world. So that's what we're going to do today. To be completely honest, there's no other way really to intro it. NASCAR in a lot of ways could definitely use a little bit of a shakeup. Now, they did this with the schedule beforehand, and I think they did an actual pretty good job, but I think that more can be done moving into the future. So today we're going to go into, and yes, I know I say this a lot, a hypothetical situation where I get to write the NASCAR schedule out. We're going to use the 2025 calendar here because using anything close to the modern day right now would probably lead to some people thinking that this is a prediction video or that this is me reporting on what the schedule will be. No, this is more of a wish list. This is not a prediction video. I do not see most of what I'm about to say happening. So with that, we're going to get into it. But before that, I want to thank our sponsor today. With it being the middle of summer, there's plenty of stuff to do, and I'm pretty sure that you don't want to just sit around and be stuck inside taking up your precious time making something to eat or running to the grocery store when you could be running out to a race. That's where HelloFresh comes in. HelloFresh helps with giving me delicious food in a quick amount of time to help me stay flexible in my schedule. And that's something I really like. While the average grocery trip takes about 41 minutes, it only took me a half hour to make my dinner from HelloFresh, so I cut out nearly an hour's worth of busy work for something like this. Now you get different options with HelloFresh, so I chose a low-calorie option and I had the honey mustard pork chops, and I gotta say, it was pretty good. And what I love about HelloFresh is that you can really fit it into your diet. I chose their low-calorie option, but I get that's not for everybody. So they have a lot of other options too, including carb-smart options, vegetarian options, and even pescatarian options. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code Iceberg14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com and use Iceberg14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. Now, back to the show. All right, so let's get into this. Now, with making this schedule, I have a few points, or actually quite a few points, that I want to hit on for what this schedule's goals are. Number 1, better overall racing. Number 2, cutting unneeded fat from the schedule that we could probably do without. Number 3, getting back to a bit of roots. Number 4, adding a few new markets. Number 5, making the schedule overall easier on the teams so they don't have to exert as much or pay as much. Number 6, add a diversity of tracks even more than NASCAR already has. Number 7, try to make there be less rainouts. Number 8, be attractive to new or casual fans. And then number 9, and this one might seem pretty dumb to diehards that don't watch this, but avoid as much of the NFL as possible to make the ratings good. With that, let's jump right into it. We're going to start the season how everybody starts the season, with Daytona. Now, we're going to do the week after President's Day for the Daytona 500 on February 23rd, and we're going to be starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to try and avoid some of the late afternoon showers. We'll get into the start times a little bit later. Now, on Thursday, before that, of course, there's the dual races. But the thing is, I don't like the Clash being on Tuesday. It's at a time of the week where not many people can come in, so it's a ghost town at the track. And the fact of the matter is, not as many people watch midweek races. So we're going to put it back on a Saturday night. We're going to keep it on the Daytona road course, but only make it 25 laps so that we don't have the boring part beforehand to what will probably be a pretty good finish. All right, so we're jumping now out of February and out of Daytona, and we're going straight to the West Coast swing. Now, this is going to span the first 4 weeks of March, starting at Phoenix, then going to Auto Club at the short track for a 400-lap race, then to Las Vegas for the 4th race of the season, which will be 207 laps. This will be part of an effort to cut down on a lot of the intermediate track races and keep them in a manageable amount of time so that stuff doesn't get too spread out and you still can have really good racing. And then we're going to end the West Coast swing at Sonoma because it's absolutely gorgeous out there, and I think that we should see what it's like having a Sonoma Raceway that doesn't look drab and dead. Now, there is one change I want to have to this, though. While we did have a good race with the current layout this past June, I think that the previous layout we used was better. So we're going to go back to that for a 110-lap race, and we're just going to see how the West Coast swing can end out with Sonoma Raceway. Now, the last week of March, being the 6th race of the year, we're going to Circuit of the Americas. So I was looking a bit at the weather, and again, this is a big part of why I put a lot of these tracks where they are. I was looking at the normal weather patterns for Austin, Texas, and I noticed something. That in the middle of April is right when the rainy season starts, and it peaks around May, maybe going into June. Basically where COTA is today. But it's really low when you look at March and early April. I used WeatherSpark for this one, and unlike a 40 to 50% chance of rain that's normal in May for COTA, in March for COTA, it's a 20% chance of rain. So I'd say that'd be better just for the fans that'll be there, because I'm going to be real, COTA's a really fun place and the fan experience should be really important here. Alright, so now we're out of March and we're going into April. There are 2 races left before we go on the Easter break. So we're going to go to Atlanta on April 6th for a 262 lap race, or 400 miles. And we're going to be going to Rockingham for a 312 lap race, which is 500 kilometers. Now, I do want to say one thing about all these start times. Aside from Auto Club, Las Vegas, and Sonoma, every race so far this season has had a 1 p.m. Eastern Time start time. Why? 1, because it makes it easier to avoid late afternoon thunderstorms, and 2, it's statistically proven that noon start times or closer to noon start times do have a more consistently high basis in the ratings. And that's something important for NASCAR. So we'll hit our Easter break, which, funny enough, is on 4/20 in 2025. And the first race we're going to back is Talladega Superspeedway. April 27th, we're going to do a normal 188 lap race. And that's once again going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Going into May is where stuff gets pretty fun. So, on May 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we're having our first night race as a 300-lap night race at Richmond. Now, you might think, oh, okay, a normal Saturday night race. Well, no. It's actually not a Saturday night. I want to experiment with NASCAR early in the season when nothing else is on usually that night in prime time. I want to experiment with NASCAR having one Monday night race. Now, we've proven that most midweek races won't do too well, but we haven't looked at Monday night. There was one Monday night race that we all can remember, being the Daytona 500, and it had pretty good overall viewership for its time. So there is a little bit of basis to say this might work. So we're going to try that for the 10th race of the year. The 11th race of the year will be on May 11th at Martinsville Speedway on Mother's Day, a 500-lap race. Now, you might be wondering why I don't have Darlington here, as it worked out pretty well before. Well, aside from Daytona, Talladega, and Martinsville, I've cut the second dates off of every track in the Cup Series, and that includes Darlington. So we're going to put Martinsville on Mother's Day instead. The next week, we're going to have the Bristol Dirt Race, and this time it's going to be 200 laps, not 250 laps. Still at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to help with the ratings, but you might be wondering, why am I putting it here? Because statistically, it does say that there's more of a chance of rain in May than there would be in April, and quite frankly, it's to keep the teams close in the month of May and give them sort of a pseudo break. Because what I'm going to experiment with next is helping to kind of condense down the season. And that's making the All-Star race night a Wednesday night between that Bristol race and the Coke 600 that Sunday night. Now, you notice I didn't say where it would be. The thing is, I want to keep this close, obviously, so that the teams can have a little bit easier time, but at the same time, we need to keep it as a rotating track. So that's one that would be changing every year. And I think I have a good backup plan for just in case it gets rained out. If it gets rained out, the backup plan is to run the All-Star race the Saturday night before the Coca-Cola 600. That way that a lot of fans who would have been going anyway don't have too far to go depending on where the race would be. And there's going to be a good crowd because the crowd for the 600 is already there. So, kind of spoiled it, but the 600 will be on Sunday night. So far we've had 2 night races. Now, I want to say it's about night races. I personally am not the biggest fan of them. I don't hate them, but I'm not the biggest fan of night races. But I think when there are night races, they need to be for special occasions. So the only night races you're really going to see here are for races that are really important on the schedule. All right, so now we've moved past May and we're moving into June. And this is where we add another track, Worldwide Technology Raceway, aka Gateway, for a 320 lap race at 1 in the afternoon Eastern Time, again, which would be noon Central Time. I think this would be a good way of adding in a market like St. Louis, which has shown an openness to racing through IndyCar. The next week, we're going to Kansas. I love the fact that Kansas would have a summer race. In 2011, I thought it fit perfectly into the schedule, and quite frankly, I don't know why we switched it to a May race instead, especially if it wasn't going to be a night race like this past year. So, that's another one again that will be 207 laps. Father's Day will stay at the Nashville Superspeedway. I think it showed enough promise in the top 3 divisions to have a long-term plan given to it for the Cup Series. Plus, it's a very unique track. Not many 1 1/3 mile tracks that look like Chicagoland Speedway but are paved in concrete. So it stays for a lot of reasons there. Next up, we have Michigan, and once again, we're going to cut this one down a little bit. This Michigan race will be 155 laps. I felt it was a perfect mix of giving you long runs that you normally get at Michigan, while at the same time keeping it close enough together that it didn't get as boring as repaved Michigan has been in the past. And then, for the 18th race of the season, and the last one in June, we're going to go to Road America for only a 55-lap race. This one, I think, needs to be cut down a little bit just because if there's a lot of cautions, those cautions take forever. Being at the track, everything was fun. The cautions were the only part that kind of got boring for me, though. All right. Now, you're kind of wondering, wait a minute, Jarrett, I thought you really liked Road America on the 4th of July and had it as a good tradition. Well, I do. I do like Road America being on the 4th or the 4th of July weekend if they can't bring back Daytona. But like I said, I'm taking liberties that I want on this one, so Daytona is back on the 4th of July weekend for the Firecracker 400. Now, for many of you who are probably upset at me moving this away from the playoff cut line, which I am keeping the playoffs, do not worry. I have a plan that I think a lot of you, especially those who love chaos like myself, will love. But yes, the next night race of the season will be at Daytona at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the 4th of July weekend. Now, the 20th race of the season, the next week, will be at the Pocono Raceway, and this is going to start a bit of a string of races, kind of like the West Coast swing, but this one will be the East Coast swing. This one is going to be 130 laps, just like one of the doubleheader races, but we're only going to have one race this time around. The next week, we get the 301 lap race at New Hampshire. Then after that, a 300 lap race at Dover at the end of July that brings us into our final break of the season. So, with this, we're now going to get into the home stretch of the season starting in August. There are 3 races now left until we get to the playoffs. And you're kind of wondering, wait a minute, that would mean that there's only a 25 race regular season. And yes, that's true. But that does not mean we have a 35 race playoff schedule. And I'll get to that in a moment. All right, so getting out of the break, we're going to Watkins Glen for the 90 lap race we always have. The next week, though, we're going to Indianapolis. But not the bad Indianapolis and not the Indy Road Course. No offense to Indianapolis. I love the track for the tradition. It's just not good for Cup. No, we're going to IRP for a 363 lap race or 400 kilometers, miles, whatever it is. I don't know. I can't remember what I put on it. But we're going to IRP for another short track being added to the schedule. And that leads us into the regular season finale on a Saturday night, August 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to be a 500-lap Bristol night race. So a lot of people might not like that I've moved the Bristol night race out of the playoffs. And there's a few reasons I've done this. One, the place it's at on the schedule makes it freaking cold as hell at night being there in person. And for someone like me who really enjoys Bristol, I did not enjoy freezing my ass off at night. Now, number 2 on this one is one that I think is a lot more important. So a lot of people, aside from the battle between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, said that the race was relatively boring for a Bristol race, especially the standard of a Bristol night race. So I have a theory about this. A lot of the playoff drivers are trying to just ride it out and make sure that they're okay. Understandable. I think that's completely understandable. Now, the ones in the bubble are trying to make it to the end so that they don't get wrecked out, but they're not making as crazy of moves. And those outside of the playoffs are not going to make as crazy and bonsai moves either. But if you move it to the final race of the regular season, then you have everybody basically going for broke the way that you've had it in years past. And maybe that makes even more chaos like what we've seen in previous Bristol night race. So that leads us to the playoffs. So you're probably thinking, okay, what is going on with the playoffs here? Now I'm going to take a little more liberty on this one. Again, it's my own schedule for my own video. That means absolutely nothing. So don't take too much offense to what I'm going to say. But the playoffs, and I know that people like Slapshoes have talked about this, the playoffs are too damn long. But I want to keep them as I think that they do have a place in the sport in the present day, even if I don't like them. So what we're going to do is cut the playoff field from 16 to 12. We're going to make it harder to get in, whether that means that the top 20 who has wins gets in, or if it's based off points again. I don't care. You can make up your mind about that in the comments. But we're going to have it down to 12. We're still going to eliminate 4 per round. That just means that we're going to have to cut 3 races out of the playoffs. So that means that we now only have 7 races left in the end of August. I told you, it's cutting the fat off the schedule. And personally, I think a 36 race schedule is a little too long. Now, for a lot of gatekeepers, they may say I'm just not as big a fan as people who like it that way. But personally, I see it as a little bit of adding scarcity where it's needed. So, where do we start with this? Well, we start on Labor Day weekend for the first race of the playoffs, just like we always do, with the Darlington Raceway and the Southern 500. Now, this isn't going to be the throwback race, though. We'll get to that in a minute. But an odd thing about Labor Day in 2025 is that it's September 1st, meaning that the Darlington race would be on August 31st. So the playoffs would start in August. Now, I want to make this a 1 p.m. start time so we can try and get the race on big NBC or big whatever channel is covering it at the time. I think a race like the Southern 500 and the first race of the playoffs deserves a little bit more respect. Now, the next week, we're going to the final Saturday night race of the year on September 6th at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway for 400 laps. Why is it on September 6th? Well, it's because the NFL's Week 1 would be that Sunday, and I think that a race like Nashville should probably be at night, and it should be not at the same time, more than likely, that this Titans home opener will be. Now, what's next? Well, we're going to end the first round with Talladega. NASCAR wants to go for entertainment. I want to keep a second Talladega race. We had to make a little bit of a compromise on this one. So Talladega, September 14th, 188 laps. This race onwards will all be 1 p.m. Eastern Time start times. So how do we start the round of 8 now? On September 21st, we're going to the Charlotte Roval for the normal race that we've always had. This is a race that I think should stay in the playoffs. It should stay where it's at. It's a great new tradition, and I think we need to keep it there to keep fans invested. Next up, in the middle of the round of 8, is our throwback race. Nope, not Darlington, not Martinsville. This one is going to be at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Now, if you had told me a month or 2 ago that I would have this on here, I'd laugh in your face because I thought that the track was a lost cause. But seeing how literally the government itself is giving money to renovate it, seeing how people like Marcus Lemonis, Marcus Smith, and Dale Jr. are all showing interest in renovating it, and seeing how there's a lot of hype being built up behind it, even by the SRX, I think North Wilkesboro has a bright future leading up to it. So we're going to have 400 laps here for a throwback race, and that's going to lead us into the final race of the round of 8. the race that'll decide the Final Four. Now, the reason that Martinsville is going to stay here, this time on October 5th for a 500-lap race, is because this late in the season, much more drivers don't have anything to lose compared to where Bristol was on the schedule. And those trying to advance are advancing for a much larger prize than those at Bristol were. A chance at the championship. Look what Kevin Harvick did to Kyle Busch last year, for instance, if you want to see. And I think that this would be a really good fit for the last repeat race of the year. So that naturally will lead to the question that many of you are probably asking. What is the finale? And to you, I say, Homestead. We got to bring it back to Homestead for a normal 267-lap race, 1 in the afternoon on October 12th to end the season. Homestead may not be the one that a lot of the older fans see as the finale, but it's the longest tenured track for the finale out there. We can always change it away from Homestead to another one if needed, and the finale now being in October means that hypothetically we could have a lot more tracks in. So if we ever bring, say, Chicagoland back in, hey, maybe that can be a finale, who knows. But I think Homestead is a perfect fit. It doesn't matter the aero package, it doesn't matter the weather, it doesn't matter the drivers. The racing is always good there. And I think while that surface is still raceable, we should be using it in the most prime position in the sport as possible. So that's it. The schedule will go from the last weekend in February all the way down to the second weekend in October. So that also means that we're going to have a much longer off season compared to most in NASCAR history. All right, so I want to explain a little bit how this achieves all of the major points I made earlier. All right, number one, better overall racing. I still think that one you never can really properly define. So that's one that's always going to be opinion and eye test. Now, number two, cutting unneeded fat. So we went from 36 races to 32. And out is the second race for all but Daytona, Talladega, and Martinsville, as I don't think that tracks like Atlanta really need a second date. And while I love Darlington, I do think that sacrificing one of its dates to bring somewhere back like North Wilkesboro is a necessary evil. Also, Texas and Indianapolis are off the schedule. You can thank me now. Number three, getting the sport back to its roots. 25% of the schedule now is short tracks, meaning 8 races are short track races on this schedule. Rockingham, IRP, the Fairgrounds, and North Wilkesboro have all been added to the schedule. Well, Rockingham isn't a short track. It is one of the tracks that people love, especially old school fans, and then the other 3 are historical short tracks. And then looking at the overall breakdown, there is no other type of track on this schedule that has more representation when it comes to races at them than short tracks on this schedule. Second is a tie between 1.5 miles and road courses with 5 races, and then 1 mile tracks and super speedways with 4 races. All right, new markets. So we didn't add too many new markets on here, but I think the ones that we did or we went more in on will be good for the sport. The Fairgrounds for Nashville is really good. Well, barring the stupid Karens. And then for Gateway, bringing in St. Louis, like I said before, seems to be a good move, seeing how they have really taken to racing, especially with IndyCar. So I think Cup could bring in a pretty good sized crowd. All right, number 5, making it easier on the teams. Now, I know a lot of fans aren't going to care about this one, but I think that this is something that's important that we don't really talk about. The teams are ground down to the bare bones throughout the season. They are tested to their limits on the road with spending money for stuff on the road, and it just makes it more difficult, more time away from home. And I think that we can all agree that making stuff easier for them in general would probably make for a much smoother process and probably a better product. So I was looking at a few statistics and looking at Google Maps and looking at a few other things, and I came up with this. Now, the original 2021 schedule consists of, on average, 786 miles between whatever track they're racing at in Charlotte, aka an 11-hour, 20-minute ride per race to the track and then from the track. Also, it averages to 735 miles per track when it comes to the playoffs, or 10 hours and 40 minutes driving from Charlotte to whatever playoff race. Now, my schedule is a little different here. 668 miles per race from Charlotte, or 9-hour drives in general from Charlotte to the track. The playoff ones are where it gets a lot easier. On average, my playoff tracks are 260 miles away from Charlotte, or a 4-hour drive, which is pretty much just a day drive. I think that would really help towards the end of the year. Now, the sixth point I had was diversity of racetracks. Well, we have the same 4 super speedway races, and we still have a dirt race at Bristol. Now, we have 3 more short track races. Like I said, it makes up 25% of the overall schedule. We have 5 road course races, 1 less than today, to try and make the fans happy who say we're already oversaturated with road courses. Also, there are only 6 oval races of 2 miles or more, which is kind of crazy compared to around 10 that we had in 2021 or will have. Also, 16 of the races are at tracks that are shorter than 1.5 miles, compared to 13 in 2021. There are 29 different tracks on my schedule compared to 25 different ones on the current schedule. So I think that kind of helps out. And I think it makes it much more of a necessity when NASCAR's in your town to go watch the race at the track or watch on TV. Now we'll get to my last 3 points. Hypothetically, there should be less rainouts. With NASCAR testing rain tires on tracks 1 mile and shorter, this leaves the option now for 17 of the 32 races in rain conditions to have tires when you add in road courses. So hopefully that means that we don't have as many rain delays like we've seen in the last year and a half. COTA was also moved to a less rainy time as well, and earlier start times give more time in the day to get a race into at least halfway and can help get races to that halfway point before the pretty typical afternoon showers seem to arrive. So hopefully, in theory, that means we will have less rain races if we were to adopt my schedule. Now, the second to last point I had was that we need to make the schedule to help attract more new or at least casual fans. I think having the same start times, mostly 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, or 3 for the West Coast races, and then 7 strictly for all of the night races except for Crown Jewels, would be a good way. Making it consistent so that fans, if they're getting into it, always know when the race is on would probably be the best way to go about it. And then the one that most NASCAR fans probably don't care about, but is still important, is my last point. We avoided a majority of the NFL season. The 500 was up a week, so it didn't go on Super Bowl Sunday. Also, there will only be races in the first 6 weeks of the NFL schedule instead of the first 10 to 11 like usual. That way, we don't really have to worry about those 3 to 4 weeks of TV ratings that slump when NASCAR is going against them in September. Again, something that most NASCAR fans don't care about, but for the overall health of the sport, I think that's good. Now, I know that my schedule is not going to make everybody happy. I get that. No schedule is. You look at any video of anyone who's made a schedule that they think would be really good, and there are a lot of comments saying, why didn't you have this track? Or why did you have this one? So that's where I'm going to leave it off for you. Leave for me what you would do different or what your schedules would be in the comments below. Also, while you're at it, leave a like on this video. Share this video and subscribe to my channel for more NASCAR content like this. And if you are already subscribed and you really like it, you can join the channel memberships. It really helps the channel out. So until next time, have a good one.